Hashtag sorry, not sorry, but welcome back to season 3. Yeah, with a dwellers below, dwellers below.
And we are back. Backity back.
Backity back.
Back on track.
Back.
Track on back. We are the Dwellers Below, coming once again into your ear holes from all around the world. I am Chris the Egg over in the UK, but today with me I have special guests and regular members of the Dwellers. On my top right screen,
Wait, am I top
Danny.
left or top right? It's me. Hi, I'm Danny. Paints, formerly known as...
professional smooth introduction as always. Formerly known as Danny Paints, now known throughout the world as...
Danny Beginner Events, sometimes.
I think it's Danny Rules now is in the chat.
Oh, Danny
because
Rules,
You've been
right.
doing a lot of rules lawyering. Like, there's not many people who know the extent of the rule book as well as you do, because you're probably one of the only people who've read it back to, their rule book back to front. Probably once or twice.
Once, definitely. That's more than
Yeah, good. That's way more than me.
And in the left corner is...
Mulch Cakey in the house. Hello. Very good to be here, guys. It feels like it's been a bit of a while since we've casted and hung out.
Yeah, I think 1998 was the last time we recorded, so it's good to be
something like that.
back here again doing our thing. So
since we last cast, Lockie, maybe the English language has changed a little bit, because now, I don't know what time you're in, but now the past tense of cast is cast, not casted. No. Just so you know.
Cool, thank you so much for
Back
for that, Danny Rules.
Yeah, so as we've known since Wittgenstein published the Philosophical Investigations, like the meaning of language is use, right? So Lockie's used casted, but we've fully understood his meaning, so there's not really any problems here.
No, but I like being a sycophant.
Danny's been reading the Warhammer rulebook. I've been reading philosophical rulebooks or boring academic work, depending on what you're into.
And Chris, who out of the two of us is more fulfilled by their reading? That's the question.
I mean, right now it's probably you. There's some sweet rules in that book.
So many good rules.
Fly X, come on. So the topic for today, and as is probably pretty clear, we're taking topics and things pretty loosely. We've all started new armies fairly recently, depending on how you define recently. Certainly not more than like 2 or 3 episodes ago. And I thought it might be good for us to go through a bit of a discussion of how we've approached picking a new army, what we were looking for, what we like about it, and also what we regret about it. Because we spend so much time thinking about playing with, painting all of these silly little toy soldiers, and toxic positivity is great, but occasionally there are regrets, and that's going to be our big clickbait title, which you will have already read and been duped by into clicking on this absolute shit show of a podcast.
Suckers.
Yeah, so I guess Lockie, you've recently started a new army. What were you looking for? Why were you starting a new army? What prompted you to not continue only playing ogres forever?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, Ogre's my first army in Old World just because I had a bit of made a bit of a 6th edition army over in COVID, and I was able to add a few extra things and have an Old World army pretty quickly. Unfortunately, ogres aren't a supported army, and I know that a lot of people don't care about that. People, and it's absolutely valid if you're playing legacy armies and renegade factions. But I wanted to set myself up, to have an army that is supported with new releases, and the Arcane Journal's kind of coming out or had just come out for High Elves, and I'd always been an elf player in 8th edition. Loved Dark Elves, played them a lot. And I would have absolutely done another Dark Elf army. I sold my old one at the end of 8, which I will always regret that. But but yeah, so I've always loved elves, so I was looking at an army that can be supported. I think High Elves has got a lot of cool unit options. They've got a lot of character in their Arcane Journal. The way that you can customize characters. I mean, dragons are awesome. I'm a big fan of them and flying monsters and things like that. And just generally just the bright color schemes that you can do with High Elves. It's something that's always really drawn me in. So yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for. I think accessibility of models as well was something that I was looking for. So some armies can be a bit hard to collect. Whereas I got a second-hand army, which was good, and the guy that I bought it off had done a lot of work already getting it up to ready for me to paint. But yeah, that was a big call as well, because you could buy a second-hand army as well, but you also want to be able to add to things really easily. And I think High Elves have got a pretty broad range. There's a few kits that you can't quite get at the moment, or can be hard to get through GW, but generally they're pretty good.
Yeah,
and they've got generally some competitive options. So yeah.
Yeah, something to watch out for when you're buying second-hand armies, and elf armies especially, is how thin the bases are. How thick were the bases on the high elf army that you got?
They were appropriately thick. I don't know exactly to the mill, but they were custom bases. That's enough to fit magnets inside them. So good thickness there on the ribs.
And this is a very big but.
Yeah.
Equally as horrendous in terms of the condition that you bought that army in. We've talked about this before, and I will never not talk about this. The army that Lucky bought was spray painted, like silver or something, base coated, and then fully based and tufted with and all the bases were done and finished. And the models attached to said bases with the dirt around their feet were still spray painted silver. It's the wrong order. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
I like it. I'm not a big fan of basing things. And, the guy, really meticulously pinned every Sea Guard model, every single model, pinned them to the base and magnetized them. So I've actually also recently...
Looks great.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. And I've recently bought I think it's the Jukochi carry case as well, because everything's magnetized, and I can just pop it in right there. So it's actually really handy.
Good.
Yeah, no, and I've enjoyed the High Elves. We'll get into a little bit into my experiences in terms of playing them, but yeah, definitely I wanted a competitive army, and before the 1.5 changes, at least, spoiler, dragons were very competitive, and we're doing quite well. So yeah, that's me. Danny, what were you looking for when you jumped into the Bretonnians?
See, you know how you rolled the dice and it didn't pan out? I'm just a better gambler.
You are a very good gambler.
I just hedged my bets with the poster boys, and turns out Bretonnians got better with 1.5, significantly better than how horrendous they already were. Enough about that. I think actually the I've been, whining and moaning about playing Empire for a while, my entire Warhammer life, the last, 20 years or whatever. But I think the actual thing that got me to invest in Bretonnians was just the ease and price. I essentially got the contents of 2 starter boxes and some Pegasus Knights for an astoundingly good price. I just saw them on Facebook Marketplace just pop up. Someone who was I bought into this game, I thought I'd like this, I built 2 dudes, I don't like this, I'm selling it for it was I want to go through my PayPal and have a look, but it was disgusting. I think I got the whole army for about $400.
That's
it's
insane
stupid.
for the amount of stuff that's in the army.
Which is about the same price as 1 Sky Lantern on Australian price.
Yeah. True. Well, it's not as good as the Sky Lantern. So.
No, but...
So
Can I
something
just
like
say
that,
that Games Workshop isn't making much money off us at the moment, right? It sounds like we're just buying secondhand stuff, so
Yeah,
that's good for
of course.
them. Thanks, GW.
But they are making the money off whoever bought it in the first place.
That's
True.
true. That's definitely true. Yeah, so the price was the main thing, and like I don't know the exact number, but it was very cheap. And then obviously the exact same drive, a competitive army, like, and we can get into it more, but like price number one, factor two, something competitive, and then the Empire army that I'm working on at the moment is really hard work. Like it's a lot of fine detail, like a lot of freehand, a lot of complex like painting stuff. The basing is really complex, and I wanted something just super easy, just to like bash out. Which turns out I'm doing individual heraldry on all the knights anyway, so that didn't work.
Wait, hang on. You're painting another Empire army.
No.
Just like-
The Bretonnians are all. Yeah,
Oh, right.
I will
So
eventually
yeah.
paint another Empire army.
But I mean, in a way, it's like humans and knights. Really, this
Yeah.
is just more
An
Empire, only
extension.
with slightly better rules.
Yes.
Significantly better.
Cannons,
Significantly,
yeah. And yeah, like the upshot is that I don't know, it's like for me anyway, it's just a completely different gaming experience. But we can talk about that later. And last but certainly not least, Chris Cousins, you were running Warriors of Chaos, flying flappy dragons at people. You're running a whole lot of different things actually.
Yeah, like, I
and
came to the dragons really late in the piece. I probably should have just played it the whole way through, but I was trying to find other Warriors of Chaos things that were maybe not quite as good as dragons, but still competitive enough. And I mostly failed. There are other things that, like, are other ways to play warriors that are good. I just wasn't clever enough to work those out myself. But I was. Because I lived in Scotland, and there's a really good scene in Scotland, but not that many who could commit to going to Germany for a teams tournament. I got called up for the Scottish Warhammer Teams Championship team, and so was needing to select an army for that. So that's a competitive teams event in Germany. Some Scottish people and some hangers-on going over there to represent the great and glorious Scotland, and each person could only take, or everyone has to take a different faction, which meant that given the composition of the team, I had been planning on taking vampires, but we reshuffled, got a better vampire player on board, and so I then needed to find a new army. And so I thought, which army has, the background that appeals to me the most, that I've had a long and historical investment in, that I reminisce about from the old days, and clearly that was Cathay. So,
Cathay, sorry.
Yeah. The Cathay book dropped about the same time, and it was clear that they were one of the best armies. It wasn't clear at that point by just how much. This is before like games had really started happening, but I was in a position where I could speed paint an army fairly quickly. There was a new busted army that the team should probably have access to, and that's basically what I did. I bought the new filth, painted it up, and that was the kind of decision-making process for me. It was forced on me in a way by needing a sort of fairly top-tier army that wasn't already taken by the other players on the team, and the new book coming out at sort of exactly the right time for that.
Did they also force you and twist your elbow up behind your back and march you to the game store to buy shiny new GW plastic?
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Yeah. I've pulled together like various like 3D prints, and also Fireforge Samurai. Fireforge have like quite an array of kind of like Warhammer scale models, but from a bunch of different backgrounds. A lot of the time, if you're wanting to use historical models to stand in as Empire State Troops or Bretonnian Knights, the scale's not quite right. They're a bit smaller. They don't look as though they fit quite as well. And I found the Fireforge stuff actually scales super well in alongside Games Workshop models. So bit of a shout out there for anyone who's looking at alternate models or doing cool things and wants like other stuff to fit in with your Warhammers.
Very cool.
So like, it kind of sounds like we've all ended up going for armies based in part on what was available or easily available, and also wanting a kind of competitive upgrade, or like the rules were pretty important to us. Have you guys ever picked armies based on like the opposite of that? Like you've started a new army, but not for gaming related reasons. And Danny, you can't say Empire because it's always been Empire. And you're muted.
We've lost you, Danny. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
going to
guess
jump in while you
I
sort
told
out
him he couldn't
your
talk.
mic.
I said he couldn't say Empire, and clearly
No.
that was all that was an option.
You're back.
Okay. Well, I'm back now. No, it was in spite of gaming options, not because of. And so the exact opposite. I was like, these guys suck. Give me 100 of them right now. But yeah, you're right. For me, it has always been Empire, except for a brief dalliance into Age of Sigmar, where I played different armies, and both were just meta chasing. If anyone knows anything about Age of Sigmar, the Stormcast long strike crossbows were very, very oppressive at one stage. Got me some of them. And then I did my best Warhammer gamble ever, actually, for CanCon a few years ago, where looking at the schedule of releases for army books, I was like, okay, and I kind of like guesstimated out. I was like, all right, I think a Carriage on Overlord's book is going to drop right before CanCon, I think. So I built and painted an entire army, and lo and behold, the book dropped just before the deadline for CanCon, and I went and had my best ever CanCon with like 4 wins or something. It was great.
You are very good at gambling. You seem
just some lucky strikes there. Yeah. But Lucky, what about you? Other reasons for procuring armies?
I think different play styles is a big one as well. You know, like in Eighth Edition, so I played a lot of Dark Elves, played Tomb Kings, and I played Warriors, and I think Tomb Kings was certainly not very good at the time, whereas Dark Elves were. So I moved from Dark Elves to Tomb Kings, and yeah, it was just a different play style. I wanted to play some undead, wanted to play something that plays a bit differently rather than like the Dark Elves at the time would play a very hit and run kind of style game, like avoidance style game, whereas Tomb Kings were a bit more as they kind of are now, like block infantry and lots of shooting, lots of casketing, and lots of magic, which was always fun. So I think there's definitely something to say about a palate cleanser in terms of the type of play style that you're actually trying to play, whether or not it's better or not. Sometimes you want a challenge. Like I could see someone who's playing Bretonnians right now in 12 months going, oh, actually I want to take a break, and maybe might want to go back to something like Empire or whatever it might be, right? Maybe Skaven, God forbid.
The word regret is definitely in the title of this video somewhere. Chris has assured me there will be. So, well, we'll talk about that later.
This is true.
Yeah.
But I think like painting something different, like painting color schemes that you've not painted before, trying to challenge yourself there, can be absolutely be a driver for starting a new army.
Yeah, I think the idea of a palette cleanser is a really helpful one, both in terms of like the hobby, right? Painting different things on new colors. Yeah. So like when I started my Warriors of Chaos, that was in part a hobby project, and so it was really red. I didn't normally paint red, so that was a new thing to mess around with. I was doing really extensive kit bashes and trying to use a bunch of Age of Sigmar models as Warriors of Chaos, and so there was like kind of aesthetic ideas I was looking for. But then by the time I got to pushing multiple dragons around the table, I was looking for something that played super differently. Moved on to vampire counts pretty briefly before having to bail onto Cathay, and going from like dragon warriors to vampires to Cathay, I am very ready for a palette cleanser of filth, and Troll Horde is currently the next thing I'm looking at as something that's like not horrible, but also is going to be
Mm.
very, very different to paint, and not like very clearly not a sort of something people will be miserable to have to play against, because yeah, I think it's probably time to start, making friends instead of destroying them.
I mean, and it is a really good army, I think, to pick. A really, yeah, with strong like a strong motive. And I know for you particularly, Chris, you really enjoy the part of the hobby where you get to pick up your models and take
Mm.
them off the table and put them in your dead pile. So,
Yeah. So I guess there's lots of different reasons to pick new armies, and it's like maybe it's good for a kind of like focused, constructive chat that we've all got similar motivations in mind for picking armies like, top tier armies like Cathay and Bretonians and High Elves. Pause for laughter.
wait, wait.
Sorry, I'm casting aspersions on the poor old High Elves. Although, for those of you who've looked at the Old World Stats website, there's been some pretty cheeky high win rates for at least the Tracian faction of the High Elves. It, depending on how you break down the stats, at some points they've had like one of the best win rates in the game. Lockie, do you have enough
Question.
white lines?
I don't have enough white lines. Our dear friend Jabe keeps telling me, "Hey, you guys, you should get some woodsmen. You should get some more, white lines and run that." Um, do you know how many games have actually been played with a Trajan Warhost? Though, when you talk, is it statistically relevant numbers?
I believe from
Um,
talking to stats people, there are no statistically relevant numbers in the old
sure.
world, but like it's a smaller sample size than a lot of the bigger factions,
Yeah.
but still enough that you're starting to look at 50, 70 games and seeing fairly good win rates. I guess there's something there. It's probably not that they're secretly the best army in the game, but at least they're not uncompetitive.
I think they've got some play, and um, it's no secret that
Hmm.
dragons have been heavily nerfed, and that really hurts when your best thing in the army was dragons. So I picked up the high elves, and this was 4 or 5 months ago, and I was away from ogres, and I was immediately winning games. My dragon was just going over and just killing someone's entire army, and the rest of my army would die, but that's okay. I'd get the win regardless, because I'd get enough points that way. But now, and absolutely, I love the changes. By the way, I'm not absolutely not complaining about the 1.5 scenario changes and changes to dragons and things like that. I think they're absolutely needed, but it does make it very hard for high elves when you've got a 500-point dragon who can't has to be really careful about what kind of combats that you find yourself in too. Like, I'm playing, I've played Jave a few times, I've played a few different games, we've played a Churnside event the other week, Danny and I, and, you just can't go into infantry blocks because, like, they're just going to auto win after they challenge out your champion and have 4 or 5 combat res at best. Um, and it's like, cool, so what does the dragon do at that point? And there are some things they absolutely, there's things you can do, but you can't just mindlessly go in anymore, and it's making it really hard. On the upside, though, it is making it more interesting for me in terms of from a list building perspective, because I do think it's opened up other opportunities to explore some of the other characters in the high elf book. So things like characters on sun dragons or even moon dragons, right? Like, it used to just be you take a star dragon or you take 2 star dragons and then that's that, right? But now actually, sun dragons on, for just like a mage, not a dragon mage, just a random old mage, or a noble can actually be quite good. Or BSB. I'm looking at things like BSBs in Dragon Princes, or I'm looking at Law Masters. They're not necessarily the greatest thing in the game, but it certainly has opened up some interesting list building opportunities for me to like really put things on the table and test out, which I'm liking. And part of that, what I think a big change is because you don't need the dragon helm to get a 2-up armor save on the Star Dragon anymore, because obviously you can't have a 2-up save. So that frees up things like the Dragon Helm to go onto other characters to make sure that they have a 2-up armor save, whether that's their infantry or they're in the cavalry unit. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the other thing, of course, for high elves, it's I think, yeah, obviously, like all of their infantry, even white lions, are made of paper, and that makes it really hard when you want to go stand on objectives or in the center of the board. And you know, yeah, as I said, even white lions, or I've been playing some sword masters, they're just going to get mowed down by magic or shooting before they get charged by some of the crazy things in the game, right? So yeah, it's an interesting time for high elves, that's for sure. Maybe I should just go get 60 white
So,
lions.
I mean, that's one approach. Yeah. So I know you're down on dragons, Lockie. What's your view, Danny? Like, how do you feel? Obviously, infantry have been improved in a bunch of ways, but do you think that those big flying monsters are significantly worse than before?
Uh, I don't know. I don't. I've never played an army that has the luxury of taking the biggest, scariest Gribblies. They've always been something to be feared and run away from.
Do you fear them
I'm
now?
certainly, well, I'm certainly less scared of them. I mean, like knowing.
Is that because you have like heroic killing blow 360-degree charging Pegasi, or because of the dragon rules changing?
Well, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. No, the interesting thing about that little like meta shift is, right, there's going to be, arguably they have, like you said, Lockie, big dragons have less of a role, or less roles they can play, or it needs to be played in a slightly different way. And it's not quite as obvious, like dragon see thing, smash thing. So people are trying other things, which means that you probably don't need necessarily to spend heaps of points on heroic killing blow, dude, realistically. And so
You probably still should.
well, the other thing you can do if you feel like it is just give the second Baron the Ogre Blade, and then you kind of got 2 Ogre Blades in your army. You just kill everything.
Well, 3 with Green Knight.
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. I had a really interesting game at that Churnside event with the Bretonians. I did have heroic killing blow guy, and so the Orcs and Goblins player sent his Black Orc on Wyvern, or just Orc actually, a slightly weaker one, Orc on Wyvern, into the other Baron with the Frontier Axe, and the Baron with the Frontier Axe murdered the shit out of the Orc on Wyvern.
What does the Frontier Axe do?
It's just a damage to Axe with AP3. And
so imagine a better Ogre Blade for less than half the points.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Much scarier. Yeah, so that was interesting. Having said that, he did have 2 Orcs on Wyverns, and I did catch the other one with the heroic killing blow guy, and having something just lose 9 wounds in like the joy it brings me. It's great. But yeah. I mean, in terms of the role, like back to your initial question, Chris, I've been seeing in the limited games I've had in 1.5, I've been seeing less big dragons, and haven't yet encountered the chaos one in the wild. But I think I'm just a little less scared of it. Although it's, I think, still something to play around and not just like you YOLO into because it costs a few less points. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is with Pegasus Knights, like if you don't have a hero that can actually fight it in a challenge, you probably just still lose anyway because you got to lose the challenge really badly and you don't have any static res. So
yeah,
it's a funny little scissors paper rock.
Yeah, because whilst the dragon maybe can't go into an infantry block in the way that it used to be able to, all of the like single models, so all the monsters and war machines and like units without champions, they still can just barrel straight into. And for those, like, I'm just remembering back to playing dragons in like 7th edition, 8th edition, when the challenge rules always used to work the way they now do in Old World. And one of the ways around that, as Lockie was saying, is take more dragons, take cheaper dragons.
Yeah.
Instead of just a Star Dragon soloing the game by itself, well, if you've got a backup or a BSB on a Griffin or something to take the challenges out, then you can still kind of unlock the dragon power, but you do have to build your list a bit differently. And whether or not every army can do that is kind of up for debate. Chaos can really easily take 2 dragons. Tomb Kings can. It's more of a cost for high elves to do that.
Yeah, but
It is
you
a
have
cost, and I
units
think
of fast cav to take challenges as well. Little silver helmies.
With a
it
little
is,
ring
yeah.
of
And that's,
Hammerhead.
I tell you what, I've never got a hammerhand off. So, like from the Ruby Ring, no, whatever it's called, the Ring of Fury. I've never
Is it
gotten
level
one off.
1 or
So
2?
1, I think. So you only need a 6 to cast, but like it just gets dispelled, or you don't roll it or whatever. And then your Silver Helms or your Reavers or whatever die. So that's always good.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, in terms of opportunity cost, I mean, what I'm finding is that, like, I don't know, and this is a good question for you guys, is a level 4 still mandatory? Or do you still really want one? I'm finding I do, which means that I have a Star Dragon and I have a level 4, and I could maybe squeeze in a BSB. I want to try a list where I squeeze in a BSB in the Dragon Princes, but, and I mean, some people like to spend 1,000 points on characters, and that's fine. So you could obviously do that, but I like to have a little bit more stuff in my units. But yeah, what do you guys think of that one? Because I think it's hard. It's hard to get that second mobile character with a level 4
I
as
think
well.
for my 2 cents, I think no, Magic is much, unless you're one of the armies that is one of the haves, like you have good bonuses or whatever.
Okay.
Magic is way less prevalent. Like it's less likely to go off, and if it does go off, even if you have an equally matched dispeller, you're less likely to dispel it because the number, it's skewing higher, right? The rolls to actually cast a spell need to be higher, and so it's less likely you're going to actually be able to dispel it regardless. And so, like a lot of my approach to Magic, in like various lists I've run, not just the Bretonians, is like, you can, like, I'll keep my little piddly mage over here and get the spells off I need to. You do whatever you want with your magic. And I've found that now that approach is just like less bad because there's less happening and less effects from the magic. So I'm losing out on less. And I think it makes like with the Empire specifically, and I know there's a chat about this in the UK scene as well. Like the Nulln list is fine now. These lists that were restricted to a level 2 mage, which was a huge nerf, a huge hamstringing, and everyone was like, "Oh, list is dead in the water. You can't take a level 4." Now it's like, doesn't matter, really. And like you can.
So in that instance, do you even
dispel just as well?
In that instance, do you even take that level 1 or 2? Because I'm finding I've played a couple of games with a level 1 or 2 or whatever, and I really felt that difference still in trying to dispel. Like it wasn't worth that halfway measure for me.
Yeah, I mean, only if you got like an easy to cast. If you got a specific job and it's like you tailored it to do the job. Like maybe it's a level 1 and you've given it a dispel item. I think dispelling is just less viable now. Maybe you need 2 dispel items. I don't know, but. Or if you're like, this guy's hopping into this unit because he's got a power scroll, and on the turn I need it, he's going to cast Glittering Robe, and not really worrying about it. Like unless you have the ability to get like a +3, +4 to dispel. I don't know. The value is not stonks. The market is crashing. What do you think, Chris?
I don't think it's mandatory or like it's not as important to have a big wizard as it was before the changes. I still really like it though. I like being, even though you're not stopping every one of your opponent's spells, I like being able to stop some of them. The more you stop, the better. But I think Danny's absolutely right. When you can combine having the same the same like wizard level as your opponent with some other ways of mitigating their magic, whether that's something that like makes them miscast more, like the Morshard or the Puppet, whether it's like the Oaken Stave or something that lets you, gives you bonuses to dispel in some way. I think that's all really good, and anytime I have the opportunity to take that, I do like to do it because magic can be quite impactful sometimes, but it's less reliable. So if my opponent's kind of gambled on taking, a level 4, it's nice to be able to reduce the effect that can have. But you can definitely do all right without it. People are doing fairly well at events without taking many or any wizards, but it also depends on your army. So like, Lockie, you've got some Swordmasters. If your opponent rolls up like a Fireball and a Wind Blast, those Swordmasters are probably getting ripped to shreds. Whereas Danny, your army is just 1,000 points of Peg Knights. They can shrug off a Fireball much better. So, the importance of having magic defense can change depending on what your army is doing and what you're actually vulnerable to.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think so. The list that I played at Churnside, which I quite liked, even though I went 1 win and 2 losses. They were very close losses, and I think with a couple of things go my way, actually, I go get 2 or 3 wins there. But I have a level 4 on elementalism, and that she sits next to 20 Sea Guard with the Razor Standard and 10 Sisters of Babylon, and the champion's got the Bow of the Seafarer, like the bolt thrower. And so that's been really helpful for me to, be able to put up the 5-up ward save on my guys, and do the teleporting around with travel mystical pathways, as well as the Plague of Rust. So actually, in that situation, even though Jabe keeps telling me that elementalism, the casting values are too high, which I kind of agree with, but also the high elves have the reroll, which kind of helps on the casting roll. Yeah, I think I still value that for 220 or 230 points, whatever it might be. It still feels like value to me, and then you add the added value of actually trying to dispel a couple of spells, as you say, Chris. If you can dispel a couple of spells across the course of the game, that's an extra fireball too, or whatever else that your opponent's not getting off. So anyway, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think selecting laws is really tricky as well, especially with the spells themselves being more difficult to cast. But I've also just been finding that in a lot of laws, I only really want 1 or 2 of the spells. So having good signature spells, especially law signature spells, becomes super important. Like in Cathay,
Yeah.
and I submitted elementalism for my Germany list, and I think that was a mistake, not because of the casting values, but just because my list is not very well set up to take advantage of travel mystical pathways or earthen ramparts.
I
I just
think
found even when
you've
I
got to
roll
have
those
the lore
spells,
familiar.
I'm very rarely getting value out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, interesting.
yes and no. The Cathay signatures are so good that the lore familiar is basically giving up your best spell, and so I
Mm.
don't think I'd want that in that list. But yeah, like the problem I found is like Wind Blast is good. Occasionally, Plague of Rust does something, but otherwise, most of the other spells aren't really having a huge effect. So I've been finding it pretty tricky in that list to get a selection of spells that I'm actually very happy with. Whereas your list is built to maximize it and to get much better value out of the elementalism wizard. So I think there's again sort of the context becomes super important. Like you need to have a plan for all of your pieces, and hopefully the parts of your army work well together. And I think a mistake that I made was like I hadn't appreciated how the different parts would have worked together, such that like my wizards are facing the wrong way to cast earthen ramparts on my infantry because they need to be facing out and can't kind of cast enchantment sideways, that sort of thing that I just didn't realize until I put it on the table.
And so you're going to Worlds with this?
Yeah. If I could have my time again, I'd probably take battle magic, partly just because Hammerhand is fast becoming like my favorite spell. But yeah, like I just didn't think it through as much as I needed to, or didn't get the test games in to realize that sort of what happened on paper wouldn't play out on the table in the same way. Like in my head, I'm going to cast Earthen Ramparts on 20 infantry and sit them on an objective, But in practice, my wizard is just never able to actually like get that unit in the front arc because it's looking out towards the enemy to try to cast like Plague of Rusts at them and things.
Is it a monstrous creature?
Yeah, the Shigengans are monsters, not monstrous cavalry. So, despite having a similar stat line to a Royal
very
Pegasus,
similar.
they do not, in fact, charge 360 degrees. And oh boy, is it a good thing they can't, because Cathay is not an army that needs more help or mobility.
Yes.
You're talking as if it would be a conscious decision from GW to do that. It's like rather than just like it just being random and like a collection of rules, so just like packaged together, and they're like, oh, actually, ooh, they can charge 360, or they can do this like crazy thing that we didn't consider.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. There's a lot of unintended things happening in rules that are being released. And maybe a charitable way to interpret that is that the timelines for production on these things are massively compressed, and so no one's being given enough time to actually like do a thorough job of working out how things do in fact play out. Like, yeah, let's slap fire and flee and disengage and feign flight on a balloon and publish that book before actually playing a game with the balloon and realizing what effect that has on your opponent's enjoyment of their hobby.
I mean, it could also be like the leaked Arcane Journal, literally just a copy paste. They were like, okay, well, they're mobile. Let's copy and paste all of the mobility rules in, and then later on we'll go back and delete the ones that we don't need. And then they just never did.
Or in the case of the new Arcane Journal, let's just copy paste the Skaven banner of Grand Superiority and forget to actually change the name of the Grand Banner of Superiority in the rules text.
So now you have an item that
that
only works if you your opponent brings Skaven. Like
doubles. They've released doubles rules, so you can ally Cathay with Skaven and get plus. What is it? Plus 3 to 5 combat res on your Storm Vermin.
It's quite good.
Yeah, Skaven officially part of the old world now.
Because they've just been shuttled along under the wing of Cathay, under the Storm Dragon's wing.
I mean, in the brand new army, there is a rule that only works with Skaven. So clearly, they must be intending that legacy armies are, in fact, part of the core game. That's the only possible inference to make. Because no one at Games Workshop would make a mistake in a published rule supplement.
No. Surely not.
Never. It's never happened.
So we talked a bit about High Elves and what Lockie's been liking about High Elves. Danny, what have you been liking about Bretonnians? Have they lived up to what you had hoped they would do?
The thing I like most is that they don't suck. Which is it's interesting. I've said this a few times now to lots of people, and I'll shout it from the rooftops. If you are a diehard Skaven player, Lizardman player, something, or like maybe you've just played ogres your entire life, pick up a different army and have a go. I famously love the Empire and have battled through being an Empire player, but it's a different game when you have an army on the other end of the sort of power spectrum. It's actually a different game, and I didn't realize how deep that feeling would go. So like even just my approach to any game, the tabletop, like my what's the status quo, or like my default is approach the table and read the opponent's list like 4 times and panic about every single unit, and then try and come up with some harebrained deployment that will somehow let me swing the odds in my favor even just a tiny bit, because I know I'm going to get crumped. That changed a little bit with a little bit more of like a list design thing with the Empire, playing more avoidance. It's like, oh, okay, so now I have some tools that aren't necessarily my units, but like I have some strategic tools to mitigate what the opponent can do, and maybe get some points. And then played like CanCon this year was I played Empire, like an avoidance sort of a shooting list. And I played 5 of the 6 games we were meant to, and was absolutely fried. Like making sure you're calculating where you're fleeing to, where you run, like how far you might flee, what your reaction should be, which units you're going to bounce through. There's like just a rabbit in the headlights of a semi trailer as an Empire player, and then
And you have to work so hard for like an 11-9, like to edge that out, right?
yes,
Like, you know, if
yeah,
you edge out an
that's why,
11-9, you're
yeah.
like, this is a big win. You know, this is
Like the biggest you could possibly hope for. I'm like, oh, okay, so the best result here, like I can't kill 70% of that army, so the best I can hope for is to kill these 3 units and run away.
yeah.
And that sort of mentality and approaching, which is like, it's very thematic. It's very like, I'm a human in this world of dragons and warriors of chaos and elves and stuff, and I suck. And sorry, that's my brother. But the Bretonian play experience is the complete other end of the spectrum. So much so, and we'll get into this later, but to the point where, like, in most matchups, you'll be the beatdown, as they say in Magic, like that the other, like, even deploying a unit of Pegasus Knights with a big scary hero or 2 in there, meaning that my opponent has to think about what I'm doing, is such a change in play style and perspective on the game, like, because that's just never happened. Usually people just go, oh, Empire, I'll kill everything, and then I'll win. Which is really great and really freeing, and I've had a lot of games that are less stressful because it kind of, even if you're not trying to be too sweaty about it, kind of comes down to like, oh, like, let's just have a massive fight of these 2 very killy things, and we'll just kind of see what happens. We both stand probably a pretty good chance of killing each other. Let's just charge, go. And that's a very stress-free game where you can kind of just like somehow accidentally come out on top just because your rules are better. And then
you can like afford to, you can afford for things to go a bit wrong. You don't have to worry and sweat over every millimeter of movement on a unit of 10 handgunners because of snowball that could go wrong if you get it wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then leaning further into sort of something I've enjoyed but never really been able to take part in most of the Warhammer I've played, which is the top end competitive games, where whereas I used to go into those matches, like I'd win maybe 2 or 3 games at a tournament and then get into round 4 and be like, oh, here's the wall, cool, all right, thank you, I'll take my toys off. But now getting to those games and then them being a real battle, like running into top players of the top lists or really janky lists and being like, well, I've got just as much jank as you, so let's see what we can do here. It's really a rewarding sort of way of playing the game, which is great. That's been a whole lot of fun.
You heard it here first, guys. Playing the most broken shit in the game is super rewarding. That's what I just heard.
Chris asked me what I've enjoyed about the switch to Bretonnia, and I've got other stuff I could talk about, but I'll leave that for the not in the enjoyed it section, for sure. But overall, a really positive. Yes, it's like a much more powerful army, but I think you could get almost the same satisfaction or fun. So what we do this for is fun, with a side grade, like hopping over to an army that might be just as weak as your original army, but in different ways, and then the game changes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for variety, spicing things up, but also like in the game as it is at the moment, there is a really big gulf between the haves and the have-nots, like between the best armies and even just between the best few armies and the middle of the pack. There's still a very big abyss, it seems like at times, in power level, and sometimes good play can help, but sometimes you just have to jump over to the other side to, as Danny said, like sort of get access to an even playing field. This is like a topic for a whole other episode, but one of the ways historically we've tried to, as a community, we've tried to address that issue, because Games Workshop rules have always kind of had this going on, is composition restrictions. And in the
There it
UK,
is.
there's been a bit of a shift towards that. The last event that I went to had restrictions on armies like Bretonnians, Cathay, Undead, but also gave a points boost to the weaker armies. So I played against 2,200 points of Empire Knightly Orders instead of just 2,000.
Oh,
And that ended up being like a game where I was like very clearly favored, but the sort of amount of work that it took to push to push towards a win was much more than it would have been without my army being restricted and their army being buffed. So
you also then score 10% less points
Yeah.
for so it's not, you're not just giving up 200 extra
no,
points.
it's done so that they get more points, but also their stuff is worth a bit less when it dies, and that makes everything an army where units are really non-points efficient compared to others, like Empire, makes their units more efficient. It's not enough to like fully change which armies are the best and which aren't, but it's starting to head in a direction of making the Empire player not have to work quite so hard just to scrape a few points, but rather it's much easier for them to get a competitive game out of it. I guess for me at least, that's what I want, is games to be competitive and decisions to matter. But yeah, I guess that's sort of something that is starting to happen around us, and it might be the case that a busted army now, like Cathay, may, even with just some, changes to the way that tournaments are being run, might not be as busted in the future. Or another example is how we score tournaments. When it's win-loss draw, an avoidance Empire army that can just get its toe over the line in like 4 games could still do pretty well overall. But in a 20-0 system where you need to win big, you no longer, even getting those 4 fractional wins is still not going to be as good as someone who wins like 2 games by a massive amount and loses the other 3 by a bit. So the scoring system as well can change what the prospects are for different styles of armies. A lot of external things around the selection.
That's right, for sure. Just for completeness' sake, though, I do want you to talk about, Chris, what you've enjoyed about your army switch. Like, what's been the positives of it?
So I mean, I was playing kind of top tier filth before in my last couple of events before picking up Cathay, and I've never played like fully uncomped Cathay. I think the absurdity of the Cathay list is what's actually pushed people over the line into agreeing that some kind of composition restrictions are needed. So I've never had the joy of flapping like 5 or 6 balloons around people, but even 2 or 3 balloons is still more than enough. It's kind of fun once or twice to play with something that's just really silly, like to laugh at the phenomenal cosmic power that you've suddenly been gifted, and some big, exciting, wacky stuff can happen. You roll a 5 on your Sky Lantern bombs and a couple of hits, and remove an entire unit of 40 zombies in a turn. Like, big, dynamic, exciting stuff. And I guess if we're being charitable to the games designers, Cathay do some big, wacky, exciting, dynamic things. I like playing with flyers. Cathay have loads of flyers, so you can spend enormous amounts of points on them. Something I didn't realize, but Cathay has kind of made this really apparent to me, is how much I enjoy playing for objectives. And Jade Warriors especially are absurdly efficient for just sitting on objectives, but so I'm like advantaged in that way. But actually playing a game where that's a real part of what you're trying to set up is capture these points on the table, go get their baggage train, push them back into a quarter while you keep the others. I've noticed that dynamic being, and this is most of my gaming in 1.5 has been with Cathay, but I've really enjoyed that, and I don't know how much of that is the rules change and how much of that is Cathay being good at it. So I've liked those elements of Cathay, and I've also really liked, and this is again why I'm like happy that people are telling me I can't take all the balloon nonsense. I've actually really liked playing with the kind of not B tier, but the non-headline units. cannons are cooked, balloons are cooked in Cathay, but Shigengan generals and lords, super fun, very efficient, maybe a bit undercosted even, but not in like an egregiously broken way. Miao Ying is an absolute joy to play with. Like it works like nothing else in the game. It's like wildly dynamic and does really cool stuff, and is also like a giant dragon, which I'm quite partial to. And so I've just started playing a game or two with Sentinels as well, which again I don't think they're especially good, but they do wacky. You know, you put arcane urgency on those things and motor them 24 inches at people. Like there's cool stuff that the book can do behind the totally broken stuff, and I've been enjoying playing around with some of that in games where I've still got the balloons and cannons. And what I'm really looking forward to after Germany is just not playing with the gunline version and playing the like full send Zerg Cathay list with a bunch of flyers, a bunch of sentinels, and running at people and trying to take all of their toys off with efficiently costed but not fundamentally broken units.
Just wait till the next Cathay release and they get the dragon version of Pegasus Knights. Better.
I mean, that's certainly possible. I guess the other thing they just maybe we can collaborate, Danny, is now Cathay can ally with Empire and take them as mercenaries, which also opens up a whole bunch of options in the book, and maybe gives you something to do with your Empire that will still be top table competitive.
I reckon there's a sleeper. Just as a total aside, I reckon there's a sleeper army that will just get better as time goes on, because I feel like GW with every Arcane Journal is hopefully releasing more and more mercenaries, and they'll forget that they gave the Empire a dude who means that you don't have to take the misbehaving mercenaries role, and that you get +1 to the go first turn roll. Like I feel like eventually, after who knows how many Arcane Journals it'll take, but eventually there's going to be a really strong army that is just this one human with a bunch of mercenaries. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, there's like the hoped for rumors of a Dogs of War kind of mercenary army at some point.
That'd be cool.
Potentially be like a way for all of that to come together. But yeah, like on the whole, don't love Cathay. I do like them for. I have liked about them that they're super broken for a teams event coming up. Like that's what you're looking
Very
for
positive.
at these kinds of teams events is you want 8 players with like the 8 best lists you can pull together, and Cathay definitely fit that. So it's worked out well for the team, and I'm looking forward to. I've enjoyed playing with some of the units, and some of the units are, like a bit cooked, but that's what either Games Workshop will fix, or the community will fix, or I will fix by just playing with like dragons and Shigengans instead.
That's right.
But that's the sort of what we've liked about the armies we've picked. And we spoiled at the start. Regrets. Danny, you're
Regrets.
What have you been less thrilled with about your new army?
Is that where? Sorry, did you say Lockie or me? Who would you like to
I
talk
said Danny because you were dancing, but it's probably Lucky's turn. So
I was
you
just
can dance
excited
while
about. Oh, yeah, for sure. I was just excited about regrets, and a big tattoo that says Ragrets, because I think that is classic and an art form. Lockie, what are your Ragrets?
This sounds. We talked about it at the top around how the army that I bought was fully spray painted like silver. And I thought actually that was going to save me a bunch of time, so that was like part of the reason why I bought it. The only reason why it was good value, but I kind of regret thinking that was going to save me so much time, as I was going to be like, all of my armor and mithril and whatever else is all just going to be like silver colored plates and things like that. Hasn't saved me that much time, because there's still so many, particularly high elves has got, all the robes, all the horses you have to paint, all the different colored, like Seaguard have got like, are actually very intricate models. So anyway, I probably would have done things slightly differently. That's nothing about the army though. not sure about. I actually don't know. Don't have major regrets with the army. Maybe my regret is not buying 60 white lions, so I might do that soon. um, uh, what I would say though is generally like don't people. You know, I would normally advise against buying an army just because it's really good. And you know that was one of the reasons why I bought this army was dragons are really good, and then lo and behold, it gets nerfed. And now I've got to change my tactics, which I'm enjoying the challenge. But I think that's a really good example of, you know, don't just get something because it's like, you know, because it's cooked, it's the best thing in the game. You've still got to enjoy it, and luckily I do enjoy the high elf kind of the general play style. And yeah, learning how to play that in 1.5, where you know the avoidance lists aren't quite as good, because you got to stand on points.
Where T3 becomes a liability.
It really does. It really does. And I've painted up a bunch of sword masters. I think I've got a unit of 14 at the moment, and I don't think they've seen combat once.
It's so sad.
They haven't won combat at least.
Yeah.
Because
that's
yeah,
one
they just get butchered on the way in.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's one of the I remember early days going into Games Workshop stores and seeing the blister packs and seeing the sword masters, being like, oh, these guys are so cool. Like unkillable elves just dancing in flashes of steel and murdering stuff with their swords and their awesome reflexes. So sad. It's one of the units that's it's so sad that they're not doing what they should do.
Yeah, and there's an additional kind of feels bad about them, because they're the kind of unit that would love to play an infantry focused game. If your opponents are taking a bunch of infantry and sitting them on objectives, swordmasters can make a beeline for those things, except that they die to a bunch of things and they don't score themselves, which is very unfortunate for all of those special choice infantry that a lot of the time are the coolest, most characterful stuff. Like Executioner is one of my favorite models from the Dark Elf range. They don't score objectives, and so then they have to chase after things, and infantry can't catch things. So where does that leave them? Well, it leaves them getting fireballed and shot and then charged by a dragon to finish them off. Not the best time to be an elf with a great weapon.
Not the best time to be any sort of humanoid with a big two-handed sword. You know?
That's right. A lightly armored toughness 3.
Yeah.
It's still a bit of fun though. I'm enjoying the challenge of figuring out the new play styles and looking at what lists are doing well. It's cool.
Have you had a look through the WGC lists for inspiration?
I haven't. But how is there comp? I actually don't know. Is there comp in WGC?
Fractional comp, like Cathay get restricted to 2 balloons essentially, and everybody else basically has the rulebook restrictions. I think the Green Knight might be nerfed slightly, I can't remember, but it's mostly just the limit on Cathay balloons, and because of the way they worded it, there's some weird things where Beastmen can't take as many chariot characters because they also get caught by the same balloon comp. But that's people weren't really doing that anyway.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I'll have a look at those lists. We'll see if anyone actually took Isles.
Scotland certainly did. Although I think there might be a few more white lions than you currently have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Well, look, I'll just need to call up Gentilly and... Yeah. Mm-hmm. I might just need to call up Gentilly and say, hey, can I borrow your white lions and put them on, bigger bases or whatever, and away I go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 1,000 points of dragons, 1,000 points of white lions, job done.
I still think the white lions, I don't know, maybe I just played Jabe too many times, but I just feel like the white lions are just gonna get butchered by fanatics and all the crazy things that are out there, doom divers and
I like the woodsman a lot more. I think strength 4 warbows is great.
Yeah, give them. Can you get demonology in that list?
No.
I think you can on is it the Stormweaver, the new character?
No, that's dark magic.
Dark, okay.
I was going to say strength 5 warbows sound even better.
Frenzy and Hatred White Lions also sound pretty good though.
That's I'm gonna tell you about Frenzy and Hatred in a second. Jesus. But Lockie, overall, it sounds like real positive. Sounds like you're having heaps of fun playing toys.
Mostly
New
positive,
army?
yeah, absolutely. And hey, the army's almost done in terms of painting, and it's been a bit of a slog, but I'm getting
Yeah,
there,
you've been
so it's
working
good.
away at that. The last
Absolutely.
time I saw it, it was like you had one unit painted, and then at the Chanside event recently, it was basically done.
Yeah, I've got like 5 silver helms and a couple of dragon princes left, and then I'm done, which is good until I get the white lines.
Have you painted both dragons?
No, I haven't. So that's probably on my next list. Well, I did really enjoy painting my dragon though. I've got the 8th edition sculpt with but when I bought it, it didn't come with wings. So I got Sam Smorgan gave me some Carmine dragon wings, which I've glued on, and they actually look really good on the 8th edition dragon. And then so my second dragon is it's either the 4th or 5th edition, like Imric on Dragon,
Yeah,
like
beautiful.
super old school. So thinking of running that as like it's a fair bit smaller. So thinking of running that as like a Sun Dragon or even a Moon Dragon, and giving that a go.
Or a baby Star
Bonus
Dragon.
points.
Baby Star Dragon, maybe.
Bonus points if you paint it like a sun or a moon.
I have not done that, but we'll see. That's me, Danny.
Have you got any
Regret-
regrets?
Some regrets, absolutely, yeah. And not for me. I've lost enough. I've lost enough Warhammer games in my life that I feel like I've just earned this. My win rate is still probably 10%. So just regrets for my opponents. It's like that. It's like that meme where it's like, oh, it's old guys like somebody call an ambulance. Oh, but not for me. Yeah, so it's the first time people talked about this a lot, like playing top tier armies, and the whole reason why people are like, oh, don't play the filth, or like whinge about the filth, is because of these experiences where there are games that I've had now, quite a few, usually one every event, maybe more on bigger events, where it's just a non-event, like you look at the army that's across from you or the list and very quickly identify that nothing in their army can do anything to you, and you will have no problems at all murdering their entire army. There was a game I had at an event a while ago now where it was just so dry, and I was doing well at the event, and so I really wanted to do the best I could at the event, and then in round, I think 4, maybe 3 or 4, ran into a player that was also quite high up through, not through running a cheesy army, but through just battling and playing really well. And it was just a non-event game where, just the absolutely broken nature of the amount of things that Pegasus Knights and Heroes can do, as well as cannons. It was like in every single phase of the game, I had the upper hand, and his massive combat units were things like Boar Boys, where I just countercharged them and wiped out the entire unit and overran, and then charged the next thing and wiped out 24 Black Orcs in one go. Just such a mismatch, and it was a really dry experience. I tend to have a lot of fun playing Warhammer, try and make things as dramatic as.
Can I ask, did your opponent know what was about to happen, or was he that is a very clear mismatch? But did your opponent go? Okay, yeah, I know what's coming.
He's a newer player, but
Okay.
I was quite quite clear about it. Without it's a funny balance because you don't want to go to a table and be like, I'm gonna stomp you, dude. But I was very.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, right. I was very clear in being like, this is pretty uneven here. Oh, I think I've got there's is a really good matchup for me, I think. And he was like, yeah. And we just played it out, but there wasn't any like fun dramatic moments, or like, we weren't having big lols over the table, which I try and have as much as I can, because everyone's there to play Warhammer for fun. But this particular game was just very dry and like, okay, all right, I'll move here, I'll delete this unit. Okay, and it got to like turn 3 and most of his army was dead, and I was like, would you like to continue just to see what happens, like to play this out? And he was like, yeah, like, we're here to play the game, like, let's play it out. And I was like, okay, I'll kill this unit, and then I'll kill these 2 units, and I'll kill this unit, and that's okay, cool. Good game, mate. Like, just not fun for either of us. Like, cool, I got a 20-0 and max points, but not fun. So that's the regret, like that, and that's like what I'm sure you've experienced a lot more than me, Chris, having more Warhammer experience, and with a wider variety of armies, and so being on both sides of just being like, comp is needed, like balancing mechanics. People are spending vast quantities of time and effort to make these things for a reason, and I think prior to this, I was always on the losing side, so I always thought, that's okay. Like, my experience of the game won't change, comp or no. If you're playing the worst army, happily playing the worst army. But I think just for like the greater good in dragging up everyone's enjoyment by the bootstraps, I think, yeah, absolutely, I'm on team comp.
Yeah, so like some of it's probably like rose tinted glasses. Like, back in my day, things used to be better. The trees were made of gold. Like, it was, and thinking back on playing in like 6th and 7th edition, especially, composition was everywhere. There were lots of really flawed systems, but the kind of default approach was that, like, we're going to do comp badly rather than play, like, no comp. That seemed to be the general attitude, and there was lots of drama associated with it. But on the tabletop, my feeling is that there were fewer mismatches of the kind that you're describing, Danny, when even like bad comp systems were in use in the days of yore. Like, and so I'm very much looking forward to, and like in Scotland, we've already started. Like, we used an Aussie rules comp pack for an event last year, and we sort of, even in 1.5, like before Cathay, we still thought the game would benefit from some community-imposed restrictions. Nothing that's happened since has made us really question that. And I think that's with exactly that goal in mind. Fewer mismatches, more games where either player has an opportunity to win, or at least to be competitive. I've actually had like really noticed as well playing Cathay, where it's not only super busted, but it's also the boogeyman, and the internet is enraged, and like everything is like, Cathay is the worst possible thing you could be playing at an event, especially with like balloons and cannons, like I've been using as practice for Germany. And I've had some like games where opponents have just come in with just an incredibly good attitude towards that, given where we're at. But they're like, yeah, Cathay's bullshit, but you know what? I'm going to see what I can do against it. I think I can, play in such a way. I'm going to kill that balloon. I'm going to get to those cannons by like turn 4 or 5. I'm going to take some points off you, and we're going to have like an actual game of it. And so even in some really strong mismatches, had some games that were really interesting because opponents were just kind of like, it's bullshit, but what's the best we can make of it? What can we do? But it's really hard to have that attitude, especially over lots of games. If you go to a tournament and you've got 4 or 5 games like that, where you're just staring down the barrel of like, maybe if I play well, I can get 5 points out of a 15-5 loss. That feels really good when you do it once. You like, against the odds, you got some points. But if that's the whole event, that's increasingly frustrating. And so I guess that's one of my regrets with Cathay, and like Danny's regrets, that it's more about playing an army in such a lopsided game that is at one end of those scales. I regret that Games Workshop doesn't give their rules writers long enough to actually like develop and playtest the rules. I regret that they're releasing things without proofreading them. I regret that you can take Dragonfire bombs and Sky Lantern bombs on the same model. I don't regret like picking up Cathay as an army because it's got like a specific goal in mind. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yep.
Backity back.
Yeah. Welcome to the Dwellers Below. We're here to talk today about new armies that we've been collecting. Just a bit there, but with the time lag, obviously the last didn't come until much later. I assume there were laughs because otherwise that would have been...
That really got me.
No, we got you most of the way. No, I think you bring up a good point. Probably just do want to say that, like, you know, in whether you're playing Britannia or Cathay, I'm sure that there's builds that you can run that are still like a bit more fair. So, like, you know, actually adding to your collections might, you know, be a good idea. So when you go to the next Churnside event or, you know, the next whatever local event in Scotland, you can run something that feels a little bit more fair, and obviously you're self-restricting yourself, and then save the really good builds for Worlds or for CanCon or whatever. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think, Danny, you articulated it really well. I think really what we want to do is close the gap, because there's actually nothing wrong with playing like super hard armies. If everyone's kind of, you know, if your opponents are actually playing that, and it's like, you know, as you said, you know, yeah, like you get to play against this like really cooked vampire army, but I've got a really cooked bread army, so we're going to have a, you know, super, you know, enjoyable or tight game, and see who can edge it out. Or equally, if you've got like, you know, demons against Skaven or whatever it might be, you know, like that, I'm sure that could be a super fun, enjoyable game, but it's just the mismatch. And I think of, you know, whatever we can do to avoid those mismatches, because, you know, if people are traveling to events or, you know, things like that, they don't want to, you know, just get steamrolled by, you know, these crazy armies. Or if you're running a crazy army, you don't want to be coming up against Skaven or whatever you're coming up against. So it's really tricky.
There's also less scope for people to do kind of like personalized armies or their own thing when the power level is so like distinct and tuned up. So, like, you know, if you have a slightly unusual or off the wall, I don't know, Warriors or Orcs army, it's still going to be having to take on the totally optimized, no concessions like Vampires and Cathay. And so, you know, it's much harder to side grade. Like, maybe you can compete if you take the optimal version of Orcs and Goblins, but if you want to take something that's, you know, a bit more fun from that army, well, then you start getting into the like, am I just an Empire army kind of problem, where every game looks like a huge uphill battle rather than just like a small uphill battle that it might otherwise be. And, you know, so there was an event a couple of weeks ago here where there were like 8 Vampire lists, and they were all like 4 to 5 to 6 screams and a Graveguard block and 1 or 2 Mortis engines, and there wasn't like much difference in list construction as well. And that's another way in which changing up an army can be really good, because you can get a different play style while still remaining like competitive, depending on what you're picking. Whereas maybe you can't actually do that within an army, because if you take something that plays a bit differently, it actually ends up being a significantly worse version of that list, and you lose like the kind of competitive function that the army previously had.
Yeah, I wonder, and I don't know if that's possible with a game so wide and so varied with so many different units and stuff. But like, absolutely, a smaller gap is gonna make all the difference. Like, I think that like my dream army that I would love to play day in day out is like 3 big blocks of state troops with some detachments, some crossbows, some handgunners, unit of great swords, like just the foot sluggers of the Empire. I'd love to play that, and I would love to play that if it was like, yeah, a small loss most of the time, instead of like, all right, I'll just sit here and not roll any dice while I die for 5 turns or 4 turns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if it was like, oh, you know, I got close, I'd happily lose 5 games at a tournament, you know. But going to a knife fight with a nuclear weapon is the way it feels sometimes.
So I guess as a way of maybe wrapping some of this discussion up, are there, if you took yourself back to when you picked your new army, your Bretonians or your High Elves, with what you've learned now, the experiences you've had, the journey you've been on, the friends you've made, would you, if you were in that position again, have picked the same army? Like, if you could go back, would you still have chosen what you did? Or would you have picked something else?
I might have bought like 60 Graveguard or something, or
Would you have?
yeah, why not?
Not wrong.
Just-
Yeah.
What is it, like 16 hex race? Is that the list?
It's
Yeah. It's one of those lists where you have either spectrum. You have both games in the same tournament. You have one game where you're like, oh, I just die, and you have another game where you're like, oh, I just murder your whole army.
Yeah, yeah. And
The hex rates at
there's
least.
no counterplay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, it's good to have. From my perspective, it's good to have both. Like, if it was a straight swap, I would feel like I betrayed my true Warhammer self, and I'd be like, oh, now I have to like mediate this army and self-restrict and whatever. But I just like to have the option, you know. And I have been having a lot of fun with uncomped events and just going buck wild with it because it's still so novel and new for me. Like, I feel like Goku in that fight where he takes his like shirt off and he drops it, and it like causes a crater in the ground because he's just been like wearing weights the whole time, and then suddenly he's like a super fighty guy. that's my experience.
I've just watched 6 seasons of Dragon Ball Z.
There
I've
you
been
go.
going through the nostalgia. So love that.
Did you start with Dragon Ball?
Not Dragon. I've never seen Dragon Ball actually. Just
Dragon Ball is wild. I started watching it. I watched all of it years ago now. That's not for kids, man. That's
it's
full of sex jokes and nudity and God, whoa. It's like pervy old dudes. Like an entire character's plot arc or his entire like purpose is to get this chick's panties and sniff them. Like that's the point of the character existing. You're like, wow, Japan in the 80s.
On in Japan, yeah,
insane,
crazy. Anyway,
what about
would you?
What about you, Chris? Not the panty sniffing, the Warhammer stuff.
Like the idea of like dropping the weights and finally being up to like full unadulterated power is definitely something that I think you, Danny, have had like the perfect opportunity to do. You get to still play like a human-based army that has a familiar aesthetic, but you get to go from learning how to play and like learning how to get the most out of the Empire army, and you've still got all of those skills and rules knowledge, and now you can just apply them with a significantly better tool. And like I think there's definitely something to that. I don't regret getting Cathay because it was for a specific purpose, and I would, if I could go back, I would basically do the same again, apart from like submit a slightly more fine-tuned list for Germany. But even if I wasn't doing that, I would be really excited to be playing Cathay, just like the toned down version or like the self-restricted version. I at some point today, an order's going to rock up with a couple of Sentinels and the bases for my extra 2 Shigengans, so we can start doing the like, no balloons, no cannons, all combat, go kill them Cathay list, which is exactly the kind of style of Warhammer army I've always really liked, and so I'm very excited to be doing that in the near future. But just have to slog through a few more games of shooting cannons 6 times on turn 1 and scouting balloons behind people, and the usual. So like,
Chris, if you play Empire, you can shoot cannons on 6 times every turn.
That's actually false, because by turn 3 the army's dead.
Wow. All
No,
right.
no, I'm looking forward to playing a bunch with suboptimal Cathay, and whether that's self-imposed or through some kind of composition restriction, I guess time will tell. But I guess the fact that there was a specific purpose in mind when I got the army, which was for a particular tournament, it definitely fulfills the criteria that we needed. It's busted, and no one else on the team was playing them at the time, so it's exactly does what I needed it to do. But in terms of it being an army, I enjoy playing with long term. That is, yeah. If I was looking for that, I wouldn't have initially picked Cathay, but having played a bunch with Shigengans and Miao Ying and Sentinels and stuff, actually maybe there's a world in which I would have picked Cathay even if I was looking for something kind of mid-tier and fun, because I think you can write that list within the book. Just that, you can also go way, way overboard with it as well. And yeah, that's so far what I've done, and I'm looking forward to being back on board with something more sensible.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a event coming up next week, which is like a step up. That we had a very beginner event at one of the local clubs a few months ago, and then there's this next event which is like a step up. And so I'll take the Bretonians, but I'm getting the opportunity, the luxury of trying out Border Prince Brigands, ambushing Border Prince Brigands with blunderbusses, which is going to be so much fun. Never have I been more keen to spend 250 points on a stupid unit that will come on in turn 5 and do nothing. So yeah, that's a good example of like
They can go destroy baggage trains.
Well, they might destroy baggage trains, which is so good, right? Like, imagine, like, that's perfect for that unit. That's exactly what they should do.
And
they should
get a table
sneak behind the enemy lines with their stupid blunderbusses and go, yeah, let's get their baggage while they're not looking, lads. Like, perfect. And before baggage trains...
I mean, that's literally the storyline of baggage trains is being destroyed by brigands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, Warhammer. Great. What about you, Lockie? Are you still striving for more power with the high elves?
I just probably want to find a list, that I can play to the maximum potential of it. I think whether that is double dragons. I think I do like a bit more of a balanced play style though. Generally, like I like to have be able to compete in all the different phases. So like I kind of do want a level 4. I want some shooting. I want a dragon. I want some infantry and some knights and things like that. So going, I've seen some lists that are like 2 dragons, a couple of units of dragon princes and a bunch of silver helms. Maybe I'll give that a go. But like, that doesn't appeal to me as much as like the more kind of mixed arms list. So we'll see.
I also like a mixed arms list. I'd like one arm to be holding an axe, one arm to be holding a sword, riding a dragon, and that across the whole army is ideal.
Maybe even some extra arms from the demonic blessings on your Chaos Lord, right? That's good.
So, I think my internet is starting to flag. So, yeah, we might bring things to a close here. But thanks so much for hanging out. It's always great to catch up and hear how you've been ruining people's hobbies back in the old country. And looking forward to hearing the next tale sometime in 2028.
Let's go. Every decade, a new episode coming at you hot from the dwellers below.
Join our Patreon.
Join our Patreon. It doesn't exist yet, but it might. It might at some point.
And as always, don't fail your strength test.